What if I told you? There's a roadside motel in America that doesn't exist on any map. No GPS can find it. No official records mention it. But late at night, when the rain begins to fall, travelers say it suddenly appears. And those who check in are never quite the same again. In October 2024, 24-year-old Sarah Miller was driving alone across a lonely highway to start a new job. It was just after 2 a.m. A violent storm swallowed the road. Her phone lost all signal. Her GPS went completely blank. Then, through the thick fog, an old neon sign flickered to life. Hollow Creek Motel, vacancy. Sarah thought she had found a safe place to spend the night. She couldn't have been more wrong. Because every room inside that motel held a terrifying secret. And one room was never meant to be opened. Tonight, you're about to hear The Last Room on Hollow Creek Road, a chilling horror story inspired by American local legends. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. And stay with me until the very end. Because after tonight, you may never stop at a lonely roadside motel again. The rain hadn't stopped. Sarah slowly stepped out of her silver SUV. The cold night air carried the scent of wet pine trees, while somewhere in the darkness, a strange metallic creaking sound echoed through the forest. The old neon sign above the building flickered. On. Off. On again. She turned around. The highway she had just driven on was gone. The road had completely disappeared into a wall of thick white fog. A chill ran down her spine. She quickly pulled out her phone. No service. Not a single signal. No GPS. No connection to the outside world. For a moment, she considered getting back into her car. But the storm was getting worse. And standing outside no longer felt safe. Taking a deep breath, Sarah walked toward the entrance. She slowly pushed open the motel's old glass door. Ding! The rusty bell above the door rang by itself. The lobby fell silent again. An unnatural, almost suffocating silence. Behind the reception desk sat an elderly man. His head was lowered as he quietly wrote something in a faded, dusty register. Sarah cleared her throat. "Excuse me." No response. She called again. This time, the old man slowly lifted his head. His pale eyes locked onto hers. A faint, silent smile spread across his face. For reasons she couldn't explain, Sarah suddenly felt ice cold. The old man spoke in a calm, emotionless voice. "Welcome to Hollow Creek Motel." He paused. Then, without changing his expression, he quietly added, "You may stay in any room you like, but whatever you do, never open the door to room number 7. Sarah frowned. "Why?" The old man didn't answer. Instead, he gently placed an old brass key on the counter. He looked directly into Sarah's eyes and whispered, "Because some doors are better left closed." The strange things begin. Sarah picked up the old brass key from the reception desk and slowly climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway was unnaturally quiet. The only sound was the echo of her boots against the old wooden floor. She glanced at each door as she walked. Room 1. Room 2. Room 3. Every door was closed. But something felt wrong. A faint yellow light glowed beneath each door, as if someone was inside. Yet the entire hallway was silent. Not a single voice. Not a single movement. Sarah finally stopped in front of her room. She slipped the key into the lock and slowly turned it. The door creaked open. A blast of icy air brushed across her face. The room was small, but surprisingly clean. An old wooden bed. A dusty wardrobe. a small table, and an antique clock hanging on the wall. The hands had stopped. 2:13 a.m. She placed her backpack beside the bed. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound came from somewhere above. Slow, heavy footsteps. Sarah looked up at the ceiling. Silence. The noise was gone. It's just an old building, she whispered to herself. The wood is settling. Trying to calm her nerves, she walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The parking lot was empty. Completely empty. She stared in disbelief. Her silver SUV, the one she had parked only minutes earlier, was gone. It had vanished without a trace. Her heart began to race. She grabbed her phone. No service. No signal. No way to call for help. Then, the room lights flickered. On. Off. On again. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the old mirror. She slowly turned toward it, and froze. In the reflection, standing silently behind her, was a tall, dark figure. Sarah spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. She looked back at the mirror. The shadow was gone. Only her own reflection remained. She took a slow breath, trying to convince herself she was imagining things. Then, from somewhere in the hallway, came the sound of a child laughing. He. The laughter echoed through the silent motel. It sounded as if the child was standing just outside her door. Sarah slowly walked toward it. She reached for the doorknob, and just before her hand touched it, 3 soft knocks echoed from the other side. The terrifying truth behind room 7. The 3 soft knocks faded, and the hallway fell silent once again. Sarah stood frozen for a few seconds, then slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No voices. Only the faint flicker of yellow lights, and the icy wind drifting through the corridor. She was about to close the door, when she noticed something at the far end of the hallway. A little girl. She wore an old white dress. She was barefoot. Long black hair covered part of her face. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply stared at Sarah. Trying to stay calm, Sarah whispered, "Hey, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The little girl didn't answer. Instead, she slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the last door on the left. A rusty metal sign hung above it. Room 7. The very room the old manager had warned her never to open. Sarah looked back at the little girl, but she was gone. She had vanished without a sound. Suddenly, every light in the hallway went out. Darkness swallowed everything. A few seconds later, the lights flickered back on. Sarah's heart nearly stopped. The door to room 7 was now slightly open. A freezing cold wind drifted out from inside. Then, a faint whisper echoed through the hallway. Sarah. Hearing her own name, she froze. Every instinct told her to run, but something stronger pulled her toward the door. Step by step, she walked closer. The old wooden floor creaked beneath every footstep. She reached the doorway and slowly pushed it open. The room was completely dark. She switched on her flashlight. Its beam swept across the walls and revealed hundreds of old photographs. Every picture showed the same motel. Every face belonged to someone who had disappeared. Sarah's breathing stopped, because the last photograph looked brand new, and the person in it was her. Beneath the photo, Someone had written, "Checked in, October 18th, 2024. But below that, the line marked, "Checked out," was still blank. Sarah's hands were shaking. She couldn't stop staring at the photograph. It looked like it had been taken only moments ago. But who took it? And how? Suddenly, bang! The door behind her slammed shut. Sarah spun around in panic. She rushed to the door, grabbing the old handle with both hands. She twisted it again and again. It wouldn't move. She pounded on the door. "Hello? Is anyone out there? Please, open the door." Silence. Then, one by one, the old photographs began falling from the walls. Thud, 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 as each picture hit the floor. Soft whispers and distant cries echoed through the room. Sarah's breathing became faster. Her flashlight trembled in her hand. She slowly turned toward the darkest corner of the room. Something was moving. A tall shadow slowly stepped out of the darkness. It looked human, but it had no face, no eyes, only darkness. Sarah didn't wait another second. She threw all her weight against the door. Bang! The door burst open. She ran into the hallway as fast as she could. She didn't look back. She just kept running. But after a few seconds, she suddenly stopped. Her heart sank. She was standing right back in front of room 7. "No," she whispered. "This can't be happening." She turned and sprinted toward the staircase. Down, and down, and down. But the stairs never ended. No matter how far she ran, there was no exit. The hotel wouldn't let her leave. Then, at the end of the hallway, the little girl appeared again. She stood completely still. This time, she softly whispered, "You can't leave." Then she slowly raised her hand and pointed behind Sarah. Sarah turned around. The door to room 7 was slowly opening by itself. A thick black mist poured into the hallway, and from the darkness, something began to step out. The door to room 7 slowly creaked open. A thick black mist spilled into the hallway, swallowing everything in its path. The temperature dropped instantly. The air became ice cold. Sarah took one slow step back, then another. Suddenly, a tall figure emerged from the darkness. It had no face, no eyes, only endless darkness. The flashlight in Sarah's hand suddenly died. Now, the only light came from the flickering yellow lamps above. The shadow slowly moved toward her. Then, the hallway filled with dozens of whispering voices, all speaking at once. Everyone who checks into this hotel becomes part of it forever. Sarah's heart pounded against her chest. She looked around desperately for a way to escape. Then, at the far end of the hallway, the little girl appeared once again. But this time, she wasn't pointing toward room 7. She slowly raised her hand and pointed toward the reception desk downstairs. Sarah finally understood. That was her only chance. She turned and sprinted down the old wooden staircase. Behind her, the shadow followed. Slowly, relentlessly. Every step made the entire hotel shake. Sarah reached the reception desk. The old guest register was still lying open. Suddenly, its pages began turning by themselves. One page, then another, until they stopped. There it was. Sarah Miller. Checked in, October 18, 2024. Below it, the line marked "Checked out" was still blank. With trembling hands, Sarah picked up an old fountain pen from the counter. She took a deep breath and slowly wrote, "Checked out, October 19, 2024. The moment the ink touched the page, the entire hotel shook violently. Windows exploded. The lights went out. The shadow let out a horrifying scream as its body dissolved into black smoke. Within seconds, everything disappeared, and Sarah was surrounded by nothing but pure white light. When she opened them again, she was sitting inside her SUV, parked on the side of Hollow Creek Highway. The rain had stopped. Morning sunlight filled the sky. The abandoned hotel was gone. There was only an empty field. Sarah looked at the passenger seat. The old brass key marked Room 7 was still there. She threw it into the grass, started the engine, and drove away. But miles down the highway, she looked into her rearview mirror. For just 1 second, she saw the little girl sitting silently in the back seat. Fade to black. The end. Or is it? Ghost.